Putting together a long string of victories is a surefire way to be considered top tier in mixed martial arts. It's one of the true measures of greatness in combat sports. There may actually be too much emphasis put on win streaks, but that's a topic for another time. Today, we're going to take a look at 10 remarkable runs that are absolutely legitimately incredible, but do feature a bout here or there that doesn't exactly impress. I'm not talking about the early phases of their careers or last-minute replacement fights. I'm talking top-tier talent who had already accomplished great things or were far ahead of their opponents in every conceivable way, being purposely booked during a win streak against fighters who had no business taking on such a task. I'm Tommy from MMA On Point, and this video is brought to you by the Championship Series. Always wanted to know what the Just Bleed guy gets up to at Christmas? Why not don him on the ugliest MMA Christmas sweater to see out 2020? Along with the sweater comes the limited edition golden coffee mug and a 12-ounce bag of roast from Caveman Coffee. Visit the link below for more, but for now, here is 10 incredible win streaks with noticeably padded victories. Number 10. Gilbert Melendez's 13-fight win streak. The early career of Gilbert Melendez was really something special, going 21-2 with an incredible run as Strikeforce champion, his debut in the UFC against Benson Henderson for the lightweight title, billed as a champion versus champion match to decide who was the best 155-pounder in the world. And while his title reign in Strikeforce is impressive any way you look at it, there's one bout in his early career streak of 13 straight victories that was pure filler. After capturing the WEC lightweight title as well as Strikeforce's and competing in Shudo and Pride, good old Gilbert had a non-title bout at the Playboy Mansion with Shudo veteran Tetsuji Kato. There's a reason this was a non-title bout. Kato's record on paper looked decent enough. He was 19-7, but the fight before this he lost to Joe Camacho, who was at the time 6-11-2. 15 of his victories came against fighters with less than 10 pro bouts, and of all his wins, 12 opponents had losing records. Certainly not the caliber of fighter worthy of the Strikeforce champion, who that next year would start his amazing run towards the UFC. The Playboy Bunnies deserved better. El Nino won the nothing fight, a UD on all three judges' scorecards, 30-27. Number 9. Chuck Liddell's 7-fight win streak title run. I love the Iceman, you love the Iceman, we all love the Iceman, and his 7-fight run that would see him capture the light heavyweight title and become the biggest damn star in the whole US fight scene is the stuff of legends. But the second fight of that run, the fight right after he beat Tito Ortiz via KO at UFC 47 to earn his chance at fighting Randy Couture for the title, it was literally to keep Chuck from getting bored. Not a good reason for a fight with a top-tier talent. See, Chuck was a coach on this little reality show called The Ultimate Fighter with Randy, and they thought it would make the most sense to use the show to build up the fight they were going to have at UFC 52. So between filming the show and the airing of it, Liddell would be sitting out for about a year, and he simply could not have that. He has to knock people out, it's what keeps him alive. So the UFC compromised, Chuck needs a fight, we need this bout with Randy, here's 20-24 Vernon White. The Tiger had lost 2 of his last 3 fights coming into this bout, but he was talking shit about Chuck for years according to the Iceman, so he got to keep busy and beat up that guy who was annoying him. Liddell won via first round KO. Number 8. Ben Askren's 19-fight win streak. For a time, the 18-fight run that Ben Askren went on outside the UFC had people speculating that he might have been the best welterweight in the world, the one that got away from the UFC. And while we all know how that story ended up playing out, his accomplishments were many during that 19-fight run, facing stiff competition and securing titles in both Bellator and one championship. It was his second title defense for the Singapore-based promotion in 2017, though, that if you could call any fight on his record padding, this would certainly fit. Especially considering that the belt was on the line. His opponent was Agalantani and he was just 6-0. This was only his 3rd ever bout at welterweight and he hadn't fought a single opponent with 10 fights as a pro. Apparently his run up to the title bout was a local feel-good story, however, and on the weight of his popularity he was given a fight he had no business in at the time. Askren hilariously played the heel in the build-up, definitely knowing that one of his strengths is getting people interested in seeing him lose. But of course in the end it was simply a mismatch any way you look at it. Funky won via arm triangle at 2 minutes 20 seconds of the first round. Number 7. John Jones' career unbeaten streak. Okay, I know there were some issues here, but John Jones has never lost a fight. I'm sorry, Matt Hamill, and I'm sorry, Steve Mazzagatti. I know he broke the rule, I know it's a DQ, but it was not those elbows that were going to determine who won that fight. Anyway, JBJ is 18-1 at the time of our story. He's defended his light heavyweight title 4 times, and Dana White just said he killed UFC 151 for refusing to fight Chael Sonnen. The event was canceled after John's original opponent Dan Henderson was forced to pull out with a knee injury, and Jones didn't accept the short notice replacement fight. You know the tale, and of this debacle came the most padded win of JBJ's entire record. Instead of Henderson eventually fighting Jones, he would be booked with Lyoto Machida, and the champion would coach tough opposite of Sonnen to feed off the bad blood that came from the 151 situation, eventually to compete at UFC 159. Forget the fact that Chael had just lost to Anderson Silva in their rematch at UFC 148 before this. Forget that Sonnen hadn't competed at light heavyweight in 8 years. There are no rules. The champion retained after a first-round TKO, but he did break his toe, so who really won? Number 6. Rich Franklin's 14-fight win streak. While teaching a bunch of punk-ass kids math, Rich Franklin was starting his fight career with an impressive 14-0-1 run that included a victory over Evan Tanner at UFC 42. Tanner had already fought Tito Ortiz for the light heavyweight title at that point. The only thing that stopped his unbeaten run was some newcomer named Lyoto Machida, but after that it wouldn't be until Anderson Silva at UFC 64 that he would taste defeat again, losing the middleweight title he defended twice. During that initial 13-fight streak, directly after the Tanner victory, Franklin fought 2-9 Roberto Ramirez at Battleground 1 War Cry. I mean, a paycheck is a paycheck and you gotta stay active, but that's about as cushy as it gets. Franklin won the fight in literally 10 seconds. There's a second bout that has padded Ace's record, this one coming in the lead up to his middleweight title run. Between defeating Jorge Rivera and Kent Shamrock at the Tough One finale, Rich defeated Curtis Stout at Super Brawl 39 in Honolulu. Stout was 7-5-1 at the time, and his greatest career accomplishment was probably a decision loss to Phil Baroni. The 17-1 Franklin forced him to tap to strikes in the second round. 6 months later, Jim Carrey would be UFC middleweight champion. Number 5. Matt Hughes' 13-fight win streak. It's hard to understand just how much of an absolute destroyer of worlds Matt Hughes was in his early career, but let me try to explain it. He went 35-3 before losing his UFC welterweight title to BJ Penn. Starting in 2001, he would go on a 13-fight win streak that carried all the way through his 5 title defenses during his first run as champion in the UFC. And while he had defeated plenty of high-level competition already at this point, had a record of 26-3, and was right about to fight and defeat Carlos Newton at UFC 34 to become champion for the first time, he decided to prove that a country boy can survive by fighting 3 opponents in the span of 4 months before the Newton bout that had absolutely no business taking on the absolute killer that was at the time Matt Hughes. All for a promotion called Extreme Challenge. I cannot think of a less fitting name considering the level of competition. It should have been called No Challenge. Mind you, these are literally the fights right before his amazing UFC title run. First up was 0-2 Scott Johnson, followed by 4-0 Chat Lavender, and then 4-3 Steve Gomes. All of these men would not see the final horn before the referee was forced to save them. Number 4. Mirko Cro Cop's 7-fight streaks. Look, I'll be the first to say Pride never die. We just did a whole damn video about the things that Pride did better than the UFC. But let's be real with ourselves for a moment. The promotion didn't have a problem throwing together fights that simply should not have happened to showcase their biggest stars. He had 2 7-fight runs, both of which led to title fights, one with Minotauro Nogueira for the interim heavyweight title, and of course his epic showdown with Fedor Emelianenko at Pride Final Conflict 2005. And along the way he destroyed some really big names. Kazushi Sakuraba, Kaz Fujita, Josh Barnett, Kevin Randleman, Mark Coleman, but both of these runs were given a little bit of padding. Directly before taking on Nogueira, Cro Cop fought Dos Caras Jr., aka Alberto Del Rio, at Pride Bushido 1. Del Rio is of course a famous pro wrestler and had a record of 3-2 at the time. He also decided to wear a mask and was brutally head kick KO'd in 46 seconds. During Mirko's second run up to the title, he would defeat Shungo Oyama, who was 2-5 at the time. It took the Croatian sensation just a minute. And finally, while his record would end up being halfway decent for a while after this fight, Alexander Emelianenko at just 3-0 had absolutely no business in the ring with Cro Cop, who finished him in just over 2 minutes. Number 3. Wanderlei Silva's 18-fight middleweight streak. There really isn't a more fitting nickname than the Axe Murderer because Wanderlei Silva was absolutely killing everybody during his insane 18-fight run at middleweight while competing in Pride after losing the light heavyweight title fight with Tito Ortiz at UFC 25 in April of 2000. Vandy scored 15 finishes in that time period, became the middleweight champion and defended his title 3 times, won the 2003 middleweight Grand Prix, beat Rampage Jackson, Yuki Kondo, Sakuraba, Dan Henderson, guy Mesker. He was absolutely unbelievable, and there's definitely 3 fights that were basically gimmies. First, and this was right before winning the title, but after defeating Sakuraba for the first time, poor Shungo Oyama, the man Crow Cop destroyed, he was forced to take on Vandy when he was just 1-1. The fight lasted 30 seconds. After winning the title, Silva took on Alexander Otsuka, a huge pro wrestling star that kept getting put in fights he didn't belong in with high-level guys, all because he defeated MIRKO in 1998. He was 2-8 at the time of the Vandy fight, and yeah, the doctor had to stop this one. Finally, we have Tatsuya Iwasaki, who Wanderlei would defeat at Pride Shockwave. This was his first ever pro bout. He apparently had a considerable karate background, but my god, how could they do that to this man? He was crushed in just 1 minute and 16 seconds. Number 2, Shinya Aoki's 12-fight win streak. He is without question an all-time great mixed martial artist, and yet his feats seem to go largely unadmired. Shinya Aoki has 45 professional wins with 29 submissions. He was the Dream and 1 lightweight champion, the Shudo middleweight champion, and is an absolute ace grappler. Aoki has had 2 impressive streaks in his career, a 12-fight run early, and then more recently a 9-fight unbeaten streak, both of which had some questionably booked fights in them. The 12-fight streak, which saw his Pride, Shudo, and early Dream bouts with victories over the likes of George Soteropoulos, Joachim Hansen, and Kyle Uno, featured 2 bouts with Sydney Games silver medal winners Bu Kyung-sung and Katsuhiko Nagata, both of which were 8 years removed from their time in the Olympics and had little to no MMA experience. Sung was defeated via decision at Yorinoka, and Nagata Gogo Plata at Dream 4. He also fought Brian Loinio at Pride 34. Brian was 4-5-3, having lost 5 of his last 7 when he took on the Shudo middleweight champion and got armbarred in just over 90 seconds. The later 9-fight run Aoki went on is certainly impressive. By this point, he was the final Dream lightweight champion and had already captured the 1 title he would defend twice. But a pair of bouts for Inoki Bumbaye were straight up squashes. Toshikatsu Harada was 11-9-2. He would be triangle choked in 49 seconds, and Yuki Yamamoto, who was 6-6-3, would receive a first-round twister. My god. Finally, and most sadly, his victory over the legendary Sakuraba must be included because it was 4 years after his last bout and 6 years after his last win. Number 1, Fedor Emelianenko's 27-fight win streak. Before you get your pitchforks and your torches out, I'm not here to call Fedor a can crusher. His 27-fight streak from April 2001 to June of 2010 is one of the most incredible things that has ever happened. His only loss before that to Tsuyoshi Kosaka never should have even counted. He beat Big Nog and Mark Coleman and Kevin Randleman and Crow Cop, Mark Hunt, the Rings tourney, the 2004 Pride GP and title run, the Whamma belt. He made Andrei Arlovsky and Tim Sylvia look ridiculous. I'm in no way trying to discount what it is that Emelianenko did. His legacy will forever be that he's one of the greatest to ever compete in the sport, but he was also given a whole bunch of ridiculous nothing fights. So let's talk about them. First, Egidius Valavicius. This was Fedor's first fight after defeating Big Nog to become Pride Heavyweight Champion. It took place in rings. Valavicius was a Lithuanian hometown hero, but he was also just 4-2. Second round Kimura, thank you very much. Next up, Yuji Nagata. Big pro wrestler, 0-1 as a pro fighter though. His only other opponent, Crow Cop, poor bastard. Fedor wins in a minute via TKO. Nahoya Ogawa. Yes, he was an Olympic silver medalist in judo 12 years before this fight. And yes, he was 6-0 when he fought Fedor in the 2004 Grand Prix semifinal. But his first opponent in that tourney was making his pro debut, and the second was 1-1. The third was fucking Fedor. 54-second armbar finish for the last Emperor. Then there was the rematch with Kosada at Pride Bushido 6 that only took place because it was Fedor's quote only loss. Tsuyoshi was 27-20-2 at the time. He had no business in there with the champion. And of course, we have to talk about the 2 freak show fights, Zulazinho and Hongman Choi. They're huge. Let's watch Fedor beat up huge people. Those were terrible matchups. If I'm being honest, I think a strong argument could be made for Emelianenko's victory over natural middleweight Matt Lindland, who ballooned up to 212 pounds at Bodog fight and was defeated by the Russian in the first round via armbar. But even without his inclusion, Fedor was the clear number 1 for this list. A big thank you to Ben Rosette, who provided that sweet tune you heard in the intro. Check out his music by clicking the link in the description and go give him a follow on his Instagram and Twitter page at Ben Rosette. Huge shout out to the legendary once and future King Tomas Welsh for editing this video together. Follow him on Instagram at BigBeatVisual. That's beat as in the band from Doug and not a forceful strike. Thanks for watching. Please give us a like and subscribe. We've got 3 new videos or more for you every single week. Let us know what you thought of the video in the comments below. Follow On Point MMA on Twitter and have yourself a wonderful day.